looking for a way to die, as long as it's got good ventilation and they can get in out of the pouring rain. So shelter. Now, I put this in here. I'm going to show you some of my shelters. I'll show you some on this beautiful farm that I really love, that I leased from one of my good friends that used to run goats. He used to have horses. He's got an amazing barn. And then you'll see some of them that are not so amazing that are mine. This is a barn on a property of mine. It is an old barn. It has been there for years, just an old locust post. Half of the side of it is out of the ground. So, you know, it's got a wood floor part of it, which I've had to redo. But goats don't mind. They like, as long as it's got good ventilation and they can get in out of the pouring rain. Now my goats, if it's raining, you know, just a little rain, they're still out grazing, they're fine. But now if it comes a downpour, they really do like to have somewhere to get. This is that beautiful barn. It was a horse barn, so I have access to these wonderful stalls. I wish I had this everywhere. This is amazing. He's got power in them. There's 4 of them in this barn. I mean, they're just beautiful. Never had anything like that. And then these are some of the shelters that I make out of hay rings. You take an old cattle hay ring and they bolt together. Along the bottom here is a 4x4, and you just use a lag screw to put those into each side of the 4x4, and then you can just kind of run some metal over, and you're just using regular metal roofing screws that are self-tapping, and run those into the metal part of the cattle ring to hold the metal on there. Work wonderful. And you can actually move them around because they're on that 4x4 as a skid a little bit. Pardon.
How tall are those structures?
Sorry. These?
Yes.
Probably about 4 feet, I think.
Okay.
Around 3 or 4 feet tall.
Too small for a cow.
I don't know. I mean, you could, I tell you, take your cattle ring at home and measure across the full diameter, and that would kind of almost tell you how tall they would be. I don't know about cows. It might work for them. It probably could. And I think there's bigger ones and smaller ones too, if you find some older ones, bigger ones. This is a shelter which started out, this is in my buck pasture, so you can see how that's turned out. It was just a old Harbor Freight garage, you know, they put the tarp over to make like a little garage. Actually, it was 6 or 7 foot tall in the middle originally. I cut the legs off and made them like 3 foot tall. And I run it with my myotonics for a long time with just a black tarp over it. I just keep replacing that tarp every couple of years. And then my Kiko bucks, they started walking on it. They're a little bit more flighty. They want to crawl on top of it, so they're falling through the tarp. Went in and added some tin to it, some old tin that I had off an old chicken house. Worked great. And then I bought this one buck who was from an old bloodline. He was an AI, an artificial insemination buck. And he got to climbing on the very top. He'd walk the ridge line of it. It'd start sinking and start sinking. And then the others were like, wow, I can do that too. And now it's torn down. I prop it back up with some post here, some T-post and stuff. They still get under it, they still stay dry, and that's what they've got. And then you can see behind it, they got a section of woods too. So if it's raining really hard, they're still using it. I don't have those beautiful barns on my pasture, but they can still get in the dry. In the wintertime, I'll put a good layer of straw in there, and those bucks, they are not worried about the cold.
How's the Kiko do for just clearing land?
They're really good foragers. They do a really good job. Yep.
I mean, they'll take down autumn all.
Oh yeah, anything that's prior. Now, just like with every goat, and I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but people think they'll eat anything. Now, there's certain species of weeds that I have in my pasture I wish they would eat and take away and get rid of, but they
some
just
of those
won't.
are toxic to them.
Yeah, some of them are
They know
toxic.
that, it's amazing.
Yep, they are. They're amazing. They are amazing creatures to know what to eat, especially as they're older. But they do a really good job. And I actually have some pictures of some land clearing that's this guy's job. He buys goats from me and uses my Kiko weathers and stuff. We'll talk about that. Health, this is probably the biggest obstacle in goats. this quote, born looking for a way to die, my 80-year-old vet that I take my stuff to, I have a vet, traveling vet that comes too, but if I need something, I can take it to him. He's about 78, 80 years old, still practicing. He said they always told us in school that the goat and a turkey was born looking for a way to die. And I believe it. They find crazy ways to die. I've had them get their heads stuck in hay feeders and stuck through the fence and then find them dead. I mean, it's just crazy. But parasites are probably the #1 problem. And that #1 parasite is the barber pole worm, or the Haemocus contortus is the real name, but barber pole worm is what we all call it. That is the big thing that we all fight. It kills your goat through anemia. It sits in the abomasum or in the intestinal part of the goat. It's got like a little hook that comes out, and it just sits there and it pokes the holes in those intestines and it feeds off the blood. So it actually just sucks enough blood out of the goat that it eventually dies because it's not getting enough oxygen or don't have enough blood. It will kill them because of that. And then the coccidia is another parasite. Respiratory infections like pneumonia are a problem and can be, and that's usually in my area. It's when there's a drastic change in the weather. It's really hot today, and in fall sometimes you drop 20 degrees and it's cold. That's usually when you have those pneumonia problems. Feed infections, I don't usually have any trouble with those. This year though, we've had unbelievable amount of rains, and I even did a video on it. Some blessings also become a curse to something else. Last year it was super dry, never had a foot issue. Year before was kind of dry, no foot issues. This year, rain, probably every day for 45 days. We get an inch or two. All I've done is bush hog, and I've had 3 or 4 problems with foot scald and 1 problem with actual foot rot, where we actually treated with some antibiotics and stuff. But I really feel that it's from just walking in that wet grass every day is where those come from. And then enterotoxemia, you probably heard of it as overeating disease. It's not really that they overeat, but inside the good bacteria, for some reason, just goes crazy and they just flourish. They just have this big bloom of the bacteria, fills their gut up, causes problems, and then they die from that. They get this horrible explosive diarrhea, and then in a few hours they're dead. And then tetanus is a problem, and we treat the one dose of medicine that we pre-treat everybody with is the CD&T, which is the Clostridium D, which is for that enterotoxemia, and it actually carries the tetanus too. So CD&T is for Clostridium C, D, and then the T is for tetanus. Vaccinations, like I say, we only do the CD&T. They make our pneumonia vaccine. We're not required in North Carolina to do a rabies vaccine unless you have some kind of, on your farm there's a rabid raccoon or something that's been in your barn and they kill it, then they want to come back and vaccinate the goats for that. Antibiotics, I don't use them often. I don't like to use them, but I won't withhold them from my animals if they need them. I'm not going to tell you that I never use antibiotics on my farm. I do. If my animal's sick, my animal has rot or infection in the foot, and my vet says this is the antibiotic to use, that's what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to use it for that. And then a big thing is wormers. A lot of people want to stay natural, or some people stay conventional. I have to say to you that I am a conventional wormer user. When I use wormers, I've probably wormed this year, even though it's been so wet, I've probably in total from January to now wormed 5 goats out of 70 head. But it's because I keep my pasture density well. I keep the bloodlines that I know are well for parasite resistance. We do buck testing with our bucks. West Virginia University does a buck test where they bring in 200 bucks from all over the United States. I put 3 in last year. The buck I showed you earlier, he was number 19th overall out of 200 last year, and that included his fecal egg count, his average daily gain, and his ribeye loin area. This year I had the number 49th and the number 79th, so I went down a little bit. But the thing I'm looking at, they went down because of ribeye measurement, but their fecal egg count, they actually infest them after 2 weeks of deworming down to nothing. They'll give them a dose of 5,000 barber pole larvae. And then you see their counts go up to 2,500 or so. Mine finished the test, they were up 2,800, and then they started themselves dropping down to 500 and 300. So those are the 2 bucks I brought home, and we're gonna grow out and see how they do to be future herd size for me or sell to somebody else. So those natural ways that I do is pasture management, stocking density, the right stock. I try to continue to, do these tests, make sure that I have data to see what is good and what bloodlines. But if you get to a point where they are worm infested, I've heard all the diatomaceous earth, all of these things. I personally, and this is personally, have not had any success with any kind of wormers except conventional wormers to bring a goat from infestation of worms back to a natural health. Now, does DE help in preventing worms? Yes, I'd say it might. I don't know. I don't use it, but people swear by it. Okay, I'm wonderful for that. I'm glad it happens. I hope it works for you. I want to be as natural as I can, but I haven't found a way to do it. The one thing that is natural, copper oxide particles. They're a capsule, it's like 3 or 4 grams. You can give it twice a year. They do help, and the testing shows that they help. There is data to prove it. So I give those twice a year, and if you need worming, I worm you. And I do, every time I touch a goat, I'm always checking the FAMACHA score. And I forget what, it's an acronym, what FAMACHA stands for, but I look at the eyelids, you can look at their gums. If they're nice and pretty and red, then they're not anemic. You don't have worms taking their blood. If they start to get pale or they're white, you better do something or the goat's gonna die. So that's a good way to test, is that FAMACHA score. You have to take a class through the vet to be certified to do it. But even if you're not certified, you can look at their gums and tell if they're pale or not. Right? Or you can look inside the lower part of their eyelid and tell if they're pale or not. But there's some controversy over natural or conventional. I use conventional. If I worm a goat, because of a lot of worms have developed a resistance to certain wormers, I always do at least 2 wormers. And that's what's recommended now. Some people are recommending 3 different classifications of wormers every time you worm, but never less than 2. Like Valbazen is no good, a white wormer they say is no good for goats, right? By itself. But you put it with an ivermectin or a cydectin, the 2 of them together, they'll kill it. And the way that works, they're saying, let's say we give 1 wormer and it kills 80%, right? So there's 100 worms, it kills 80. And then I give another one and it kills 90, so there's only 20 worms left, so you're only gonna end up with, what would that be, like 2% or something. So you get almost 100% kill by using 2 different wormers. And that's how it goes. Any questions? Worms are going to kill your goats. Management for worms is the best practice to prevent it. Prevention is the key. But when you get them, you're going to have to treat them or they're going to die quick.